Neil, welcome back to the show.
Pretty excited to be back here. It's been
Yeah.
about 7 months or so.
Yeah, I just actually looked. I was like, when did that come out? So for those of you who, I don't know, Neil, your voice is very specific. So I'm assuming people are gonna be like, I remember this conversation. So the last time we had you back on the show for a one-on-one conversation was back in January. And we got super gritty talking about psychological flexibility. I still have a Post-it note
Good.
on my computer monitor that actually says psychological flexibility is greater than mental
Yes.
toughness. And it resonated with a lot
Yeah.
of folks. And so if you haven't listened to it yet, go back. It came out in January. It doesn't have an episode number associated with it. Maybe we can link it in the show notes for you all, but it's really great. And I can't wait to dive into
Yes.
another
Yes.
topic with you today.
Awesome. I'm excited.
Yeah. Chomping at the bit. So that was January. It's now August, which I cannot believe. The summer has flown by. We have, ourselves included in this. Most of us have done a big race or are about to do a big
Sure.
A race for the year. And so I was like, what? I was like, I really want to talk to Neil again. What should we talk about? And I said, you know what? Confidence. I've been feeling a lack of confidence heading towards some racing this fall. And so I want to talk about what is confidence in the athlete context? How do athletes develop that confidence? And then how can coaches help athletes cultivate it? So I'm wondering, when I sent you that email and I said, hey, I want to talk about confidence, what kind of came to mind
Oh
there?
boy. I mean, it's everything. Oh boy, is it
Oh
good?
boy, is it
I mean,
good
it's,
response.
it's all. I mean, a lot of what we do is rooted in confidence. It's rooted in how we feel about ourselves. Going all the way down to our self beliefs or our self worth. And kind of stemming out and rooted literally. I mean, if you think about it as like a tree, you think about self worth as way down there at the roots. And then confidence is kind of over here, and over here is self-efficacy with the leaves, and so it just kind of trickles down. So kind of thinking about it this way. So I mean, self-efficacy. These are the leaves of the tree. The belief that you can perform a specific task at a certain level. So the belief that you can run your 100-mile under 30 hours. So when I did Bighorn a couple months ago, really right now, it's like I had this. I went in with this belief that I could, I was going to get this done. I was going to get it done under 36 hours or whatever the cutoff was. And I didn't even know if it was 35 or 36. And some people were talking about it during the race. And I'm like, I'll get it done. And there was no worries. And that's self-efficacy. And kind of is dropping down a little bit under that is going to be self-confidence. The beliefs about your general abilities. Can I run? Do I have the ability to run? Do I have the ability to run fast? And and then and so you kind of think of those as the branches. So the leaves are those little things. I could, and it's going down to the branches, and then you're looking down at the trunk of the tree, of self-esteem. The emotional judgments about yourself based on what you've experienced in life, and that's rooted down even further at the roots of self-worth. The beliefs about your values and worth as a person. So it all kind of trickles up. And a lot of time what we're dealing with as coaches is up here as self-efficacy and self-confidence. And it gets further down when you come to see me when you're talking about self-esteem and then self-belief. And so what are we talking about? It's kind of this generalized feeling that can I do something? Can I do this workout? I was thinking about this today. I was looking at an athlete's workouts, and I was like, and I could hear in the tone of their voice, that, not in their voice, but in the tone of the writing, that they were not so confident about what they did. And I looked at it at a different angle. I looked at it as a coach, and I analyzed. I said, well, actually, you ran these a lot faster, and that, than you thought you did. Oh, really? And then you could hear the confidence shoot up in the email back to me. It's like, oh, wait a second. So, thinking about it as little things as we do as coaches, I'm not telling them, oh, you need to be confident. I'm just doing these little things just to, hey, wait a second. let's look at the reality here. What was the reality, And you actually did better than you thought you did. And there's all sorts of things we can do as coaches and we're not manipulating confidence. We're just helping them succeed, And when you have success, when you have little successes along the way, that's the stuff that builds confidence.
I think that's so interesting, and I've read a bunch about self-efficacy over the years, and I love that it's a task specific self-confidence, right? It's like you learn it, and you can actually like pick it up from the people around you, right? And I think that is so important in our sport, and maybe that's where we kind of come up with, maybe that's where we like have this like this gap, right? Because we've mentioned before, one of the big things about ultra running is that we can't if you're racing a marathon, your longest run might be 20 or 22 miles. That's pretty close to the full distance. If you're running a 100-mile race, you have this unknown, this gap. And I feel like self-efficacy and the self-confidence piece, all of a sudden it's like, how can we not manipulate, but how can we like fill that gap with this like experience, like, because say you haven't had that experience yet, say you haven't run the 100-mile distance yet or the 50-mile distance yet, and you have no previous experience to tell you that you can, like, to me it's like that's the most, I mean, we all have other self-confidence issues outside of like the obvious ones, but to me that's what's so interesting about our sport. And I think that's where our athletes are kind of constantly coming up against that wall of the like the unknown causing this gap in self-confidence. And I'm wondering, is there a way to target that? Is there a way to build off of these smaller experiences, like telling your athlete that they actually ran the workout better than they expected, to kind of fill that gap?
It's structuring our workouts, it's structuring the experience to be challenging, but right at the level, bumping up against that level of what can I do? And all right, today is a 5-hour run. Maybe we did only 4 hours last time, but okay, I know that we're only going to 6 hours, and this is scary because now you're going to do something that's 24 hours, 30 hours. Part of it's in the framing, the framing. That 6 hours, it could be an all-day experience. Could be, maybe it's an 8-hour day. It's an all-day experience, and you are creating a situation where they're going to succeed. And they can succeed, and they know they can succeed that, and it's like taking it to the next level, and really working with the frame. Then look, you felt what this felt like. You had energy left over. You came home and did okay. What happens if we slow it down a little bit more? What happens if we, dial in that nutrition a little bit more? And so you're practicing over and over again. So it's this mastery, which is key to developing confidence, is and refocusing it on that, mastering these little tasks, mastering that 6-hour day, mastering your nutrition plan, mastering, your pacing. What does an all-day pace feel like? And I'll use myself as an example because it's so fresh. It's like when I did Bighorn, I never ran in like 90-degree temperatures, and it was supposed to be 90 degrees at the start. And it's like, all right, this is gonna be interesting. Let's go for it, but I had 3 days prior, or actually the week prior, it was getting into the 90s here in Colorado. I was like, well, let's go, just experience it. It wasn't really necessarily a physiological adaptation. I wasn't going to get much out of running for an hour, in 90-degree temps. But I was also going to get, wait a second, I could run this pace and feel okay here, and see what that, maybe I'll go 2 hours in this or 3 hours, have my longest run, a week beforehand. And I know okay, same thing with altitude. If people, you go out to altitude, you're like, oh my God, I'm not doing any altitude. I've never done altitude training for Leadville, but I'll go up to altitude and go, yeah, this is what it feels like. I'm not going to die here. I'm going to be able to get down in one piece. It's uncomfortable, but you're developing that confidence. You're developing mastery, And, okay, so, and there's other pieces of it. Go ahead. You got something.
I really like that. And I like that in the sense that my vision of this is that I think we think that, oh, to develop these skills, we have to do extreme, crazy things. And really, that's not the case. You know, it's really like to develop toughness. People are like, how do I develop toughness? And I'm like, well, you show up every day. You get out to do your workout even when the weather isn't ideal, or, you know, you're a little bit tired, or, you know, work is stressful. I mean, obviously we got to balance those stressors, but it's like showing up develops these skills. And so I like that it's not so much this like, oh, I've got to go put myself through the ringer in order to develop, you know, my nutritional plan, or the knowledge that I can run at an all day pace, or the knowledge that I can, you know, troubleshoot and mitigate things that might come up. And I think that when people think about how do I, you know, how to prep for the unknown, how to develop confidence, how do I develop mental toughness or or psychological flexibility, we don't think this, but we're drawn to this notion that, you know, more is better, more extreme is better. And I don't really think that's the case. I think it's, you know, having confirmation from just like showing up and doing the work day in and day out.
Thinking about Steve Magness has a new book out. Maybe you've read it. I think he might come out and say it somewhere there, and he quotes Stephen Hayes, who's the acceptance commitment therapy originated from him. And so he's talking about psychological flexibility. He's talking about mental toughness, and it's not what we've all been trained to think it was. It's not beating ourselves to a pulp to get these things done. This, you know, the bravado, the beating our chest to get these things done. It's doing things in a way that we are psychologically flexible, where we're compassionate with ourselves. And okay, we fell, we get back up. All right, what's the next step? This is uncomfortable right now. You know, how could I be here, right now? You know, and using, you know, going back to that, you know, the idea of psychological flexibility is, you know, really it's this piece of mindfulness where we recognize when we're caught up in the negative self-talk, which could bring our self-confidence down, and then, okay, come back to where we are right now. Constantly during that, and I mentioned this on that last podcast with you, is like constantly just reframing myself and just going, all right, you know, I'm right here, right now, and just, you know, keep going. This is uncomfortable. Yeah, okay, this is what you signed up for. The confidence never waned going through that race, you know, and I think a lot of it had to do with just being present and going, yeah, this kind of hurts, you know. It was towards the end where it's like, where you smell the barn a little bit, you know, and you know you're 5 miles from the end of this race, and you're on this burning hot road, and it's, you know, it's like, oh, come on, you know. But the confidence didn't wane. It's like my buddy was like, you know, we only got like an hour left. I was like, I got this, you know, we got it.
We got it. It's fine. I've done 5 mile runs before, you know.
But it's experience, and like you mentioned, noticing other people, you know, other people that we know that have had success doing this. I think that it's really helpful, and the mastery of the small things. I know I could deal with the nutrition problems. You know, I know I could deal with blisters. I've dealt with blisters for a gazillion years, you know, and it's, you know, it's like, okay, bring it at me, you know.
Yeah, so I think we've talked a little bit, you know, in the context of sport and for athletes, confidence is kind of this self-efficacy piece plus, you know, kind of us building off of that. And then, you know, athletes can cultivate this by mastery of the little things, by showing up, by you know, experience, by looking to other people's experience, and we can kind of help cultivate or develop that too as coaches. And so there are two things that I really want to talk about. First is how can we help the athletes cultivate that, like, further, you know, beyond, we can't run the miles for them, right? Like, we got to send them out into the world and they run the miles on their own and they come back to us. So how can we cultivate it for athletes? And then after that, I want to talk about pitfalls and what we need to, you know, what we should be watching out for, in pitfalls of confidence.
So I think one of the things as coaches is setting people up for success, you know, and that, you know, the entire way, you know, and when you set people up for success and they have those small successes, that's the mastery, right? That's what you're going to be able to build off of right there. Now, you could also teach a little bit of, hey, we talk a little bit about optimism, and how that actually is a really good tool in of itself. But a lot of people don't believe in optimism. They don't necessarily believe the glass is half full, even though they're about to run 100 miles. And and it's coming back to the here and now. What can I do to get you to come back to just this one workout? What could I do to get you to come back to this one interval? And having that discussion. What can we do to bring you back to here and now? Because if you're thinking about what's over there, you're thinking about the outcome, you're not, that's going to create that tension for you. But if you're thinking about right here and right now and being present where your feet are and what you can control, what you have that mastery over, okay, hey, so I just did like half hour ago, I did this crazy workout on the bike. And I, for whatever reason, my confidence has been decreasing on the bike for the last year or so. And I was like, I get on this thing and I'm like, oh my God, this is going to hurt. And then I said, wait a second, you're talking about confidence. Let's go back to one interval at a time. And I go back and I grind it out, one interval. Okay, that was great. Well, the next interval, it was these 40-20s followed by a short tempo. And then, short tempo, and then recovery, and then 2 more sets of that. And it was brutal, but it was beautiful because I just stayed right there. And then I started using the self-talk. So how do we get people to do that? Go back to that one thing at a time. Let's focus on that. We're talking about what the finish line looks like. Let's talk about what it looks like right now. What you can control right now? I can control my attitude. And like on my bike, I started focusing on self-talk. Okay, what do you know about self-talk, Neil? Okay, you got this. You got this. Look strong. And then, and it was a video related thing. So, I'm watching the video and I was like, I'm just looking at them right here in this race with these guys. I don't know, what I'm doing. But that helped. And before I know it, those 3 those 3 sets were over with. And I was like, yeah, I did it for the first time in a couple of years. It was awesome. And it was just that. Focusing, if we can get our athletes to focus on that one thing, that one moment, mastering that moment, coming back to what I can control. What have you had practice with? This is why I started all my athletes in January. Let's practice nutrition. I want you to carry your gels, even on the long runs over an hour. We're going to bring all this stuff, and you're going to practice with this. You're going to practice with your poles early on, and guess what? You know how to deal with that stuff. And along the way, you're going to have accidents and errors and failures, but you're going to learn to recover from that and learn how to address those issues during that time.
Yeah, and then I feel like we have to remind athletes that we've done that stuff, right? Like so I had an argument with Steven, my husband, last night about confidence and how you develop confidence in an athlete. And for those of you who don't know, Steven was a U.S. national champion on the mountain bike and raced on the World Cup, was a professional mountain biker for a long time before going back to medical school. Yeah. And so he was like, well, how I built confidence was, key workouts, like really key workouts and setting myself up for success in those key workouts and nailing them. And that is counter to everything I think about when it comes to confidence and when it comes to how I drive that narrative with my athletes. I'm the person that, yes, of course, I want them to succeed in their workouts, and I set up work, I want them to feel good in some of these workouts, and I want to praise them and tell them that they did a good job and all those things. But I'm the person that's like, no, you showed up every day, you practiced your nutrition, you worked with your poles, you made the long runs happen. Like, it's a summation in my mind of all the work that you've done. I'm reminding you that you've been practicing this for 6 months type of thing. And so it was this counter, and I don't think that while they sound different in practice, I think that there's probably more overlap than than less. But it became this argument before bed being like, no, 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 key workouts are garbage. And, it's all about everything else you do. And I wasn't sure if this was like a professional at like the pinnacle of the sport athlete versus the everyman athlete, or something in between. But it's kind of like, you mentioned like practicing these key things, mastering this one workout or this one interval. And so I do think there's overlap, but at the same time, there's dissonance in my head
overlap,
over it.
and I think they're taught different languages, maybe. I think,
Yeah.
he set them up for success. Do these workouts that you can do. So a light bulb went off in my head here, just the other day as I'm trying to run this 90-degree temps. And I'm doing these longer efforts, and I'm still kind of recovering. It takes a little bit longer to recover from, for 100, for me, it does at least. And I'm out here 100 degrees, and I said, well, why don't you make these runs shorter? Why don't you cut the intervals down a little bit, And all of a sudden, everything was starting clicking again, and it was setting myself up for success, and that carries over to my athletes. I have athletes training for marathons, and it's 95 degrees and it's 100% humidity. And I'm like, we're going to bring down this, some of these runs.
Yeah. Take the easier win is kind of the like thing there.
You're also helping the athlete identify what those workouts are. You talk about key workouts. Okay, what went well during these workouts? Write it down and have a log and go back to that log. So before your race, you should be reflecting. You should be going back on your training peaks, whatever your log is, your Excel spreadsheet, and look at all your workouts. Oh yeah, I forgot about this, 5-hour run I did where I just totally suffered and I just grinded through it. Oh yeah, that was great. I did, oh yeah. Neil had me do this, 45-minute tempo run, uphill, overhanging, it was crazy, and I did it, but those are, and you need to mark those, you need to remember those, and you need to reflect on those, because that's the stuff that's going to help you. You're going to remember that when you go into the race.
Training Peaks should give us a little like gold star feature, where like you can like tag a workout with that in mind, maybe. I have athletes that do like a weekend summary every week now, and those are great because it gives them it's insight for me, but it's reflection for them, because I find that some athletes are kind of blazing through post-workout comments being like, it was fine. And I'm like, well, it was fine is like not really a reflection. And so they've been going in and putting in like a weekend, just like reflection on their week. What went well, what didn't go well, what do they want to improve on for next week? What did they accomplish? Those kinds of things. And it's like, to me, that's a way to kind of like have some of that sink in a little bit more, because I do think we have goldfish memory, and we like forget that we've been training for years or for months, and it's like we doubt everything when we're 4 to 6 weeks out from a big race.
I love this. I saw this the other day. Is put one instant of success. Write down what that instance of success was. Maybe for that day, for that workout, for that race. And you should be, after races, do a race report. What was one instance of success? What was one instance of improvement? And I had one more I wrote down here. I'm cheating. And one instant of great effort. Okay, I always have to write things down. I just get talking. I'm like, oh, what was that word I said? One instant of great effort. Write those 3 things down. After each workout, and after each race, and reflect on them. You don't have to look at it every day, but maybe every couple of weeks, look at it.
Yeah, I think when you're in that doubtful period, like I'm in my doubtful pre-TDS window, in which I got COVID in mid-July, and I'm like, I haven't done the work I'm supposed to do. Panic, panic, panic. And I have to remind myself that it's like, okay, well, maybe it wasn't ideal, but you have done work. And so I think in this moment of panic, in the final 4-week countdown window, when for sure people start to panic, that they haven't done the work they're supposed to do, that to me is a great time to be like, actually, like, look at this, like, look at these long runs I put in, look at this, this great training day I had with a friend, look at, getting out there, and I remember this day I ate, 6 oatmeal cream pies. It was great. Like whatever it might be, right? Like I think it's important to reflect on those little wins and use those little wins to kind of build towards, I don't know,
Totally.
jumping into the unknown on
Totally.
race day feeling a little bit
You
better.
got to grab the little wins. They're all over, and they're in your everyday life. Look at, and that's where, even thinking about doing like a gratitude journal, something simple, writing, if it,
Yeah.
the 3 things that went well today, maybe that's part of your workout. Maybe that's just part of your general life, what's going on. Because, I talk about that, and when I'm working with people with therapy clients, that's, what went well, write those 3 things down.
They can be small things. I've kept a gratitude journal, and it was like, I got out of bed
I
today.
got to bed
Gold
today.
star.
I brushed my teeth, yeah. Oh, my Achilles issue was this much better. It was 7 instead of 10 today, Look at those things, rate those things. Look, there's improvement every day. There's good every day. Sometimes it's hard to see. And that's why you got to write them down and search for them sometimes. Yeah, and definitely in our workouts, it's like,
Yeah.
there was a workout a couple weeks ago, one of these bike workouts where I was like, I didn't finish it. And I was like, well, you got 2/3 of the way done, and you were also pretty pooped because you went up and down Hope Pass the day before, which is going to tire you out a little bit.
I think doubt is a natural part of being a human, obviously, and doubt is a natural part of being an athlete. And so as athletes are on this confidence journey, as we as coaches are on this journey to help athletes cultivate that, or at least remind them that they should be confident, right? By we don't say, hey, be confident. It's like we show them. We show them why they should be confident. Like these are the things that you've accomplished, little and big. What kind of pitfalls, what pitfalls, what terrain traps are laying out there in front of us that we as coaches or we as athletes need to be cognizant of?
I get that every day. I hear the comment, yes, I did that, but I'm not that good at this, and when we think about kind of the tree structure, that's when I started going, wait a second, is there something more going on? Maybe going on about their self-belief. Maybe I do need to refer them to somebody, that like a mental performance consultant or, a sports psychologist or someone like that. That's a possibility. I look for yes, but I look for that consistent, just this doubt. I don't think so. And then I look at myself as a coach. What is there something in the workout that I've given them that is distracting them from that, building that confidence? I can't blame myself entirely. I can't take that entire responsibility, but there's stuff I can control right here. Let's bring this down a notch. Why are we bringing this down a notch? Well, I want you to feel success. But I could do this. I could do this. I know you can. But but there's a reason you might not be hitting those times. And it might be that you need to recover. And that is something that, we've got to look at. If we are consistently pushing somebody and they're pushing themselves, how much harder are they pushing themselves? Maybe there's something else in this person's life. I just found out one of my athletes has a stand-up job in the heat, on pavement, all day, 6 to 8 hours a day. And then, and so I'm giving her the workouts and I'm like, oh, wait a second. Let's bring these workouts down. You've already got some of your training in. You're on your feet half the day, most of the day. So what can we do? We need to look at that big picture. So, and use language of confidence, too. Use those words, mastery. Let's focus on that one interval at a time. I'm just. What are the pitfalls? I've kind of jumped around there.
No, but I think that's good. It's kind of that reframing that we have.
Yeah.
We have a certain responsibility by choosing language appropriately when you're communicating. Working on this with an athlete. I think
the pitfalls are you get into the trap of I want to do more and more and more, and and it could be I want to do this race, this race, this race, this race. Wait a second, that's like 3 marathons in a row here, and we have it as a duty as a coach to to really help people realize that you're not you might not see the success in all 3 of those races. You might see during the first one. And 3 weeks later, there may not be that success, and you may have some diminishing returns here. And that's the other thing that I think confidence has to be based in. It has to be based in reality. I don't want to. I'm not trying to pull the rug out on people, from under people. And sorry guys, you can't do this. But I want to, we'll set them up for going back to that idea of setting people up for success. If you're going to do 300-mile races in a 3-month period, you're going to have some fatigue in your legs. So expect this is how we're going to push people. Push yourself through this. It's going to be a little different the time you get to number 3.
Yeah, I've definitely had athletes who have been like, "Hey, can I do this thing?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like I think so." Kind of maybe a last minute race type of thing, and it's like maybe we're not clear about expectations, like. Maybe it's a yes and like just so like we're not tapering for this event, like really go out there and enjoy it. Maybe that conversation doesn't happen, and then they do the thing and it's like maybe not great because we weren't on that same wavelength of like what the purpose of that event was, and then having to kind of take a step back and be like, hey, no, it wasn't a failure. Like, you went into the race with this kind of load on you, and this was my expectation for the race. And so I think I've definitely had to kind of work through that with athletes or athletes who do have a failure at a race, right? They've had to drop for some reason. And then it's like, they're, hungry to jump back in to use that fitness, take that fitness somewhere else really quickly. And it's like, okay, why are we doing that? Are we doing that because you need it to feel confident? Or are we doing it because you really just want to do that race? And like that to me is that is almost one of the hardest conversations I have to have with athletes every season is the failure at an event and the need, want, sensation that they should go immediately do something else.
So I'll tell you a story. I'm thinking of a story of myself. Because I love doing things that challenge myself a little bit. So year after I tried Leadville for the first time, I got to get in next time. So I'm going to sign up for Leadman. Which is this, of course, I'm not gonna sign up for the camp or anything else. I'm gonna go into Leadman and try to push myself through that. Now, I wasn't necessarily setting myself up for success, and I probably should have gotten a coach, because I've never mountain biked before, which, whoops. But I learned a lot. And so there was there's that process too. It's just, having the ability to reframe that and go, what can I learn from this experience? And what can I learn, to go into this next time with, and the next time and the next time and have, end up having success in different ways, all along the way. So you're right. Setting yourself up for success. The first time I tried to qualify for Boston 15 years ago, it was, I didn't make it, so I'm going to do two more marathons. I ended up getting Achilles tendonitis and being out for probably about 3 years after that. So it's you got to set yourself, have those realistic expectations. This isn't goal setting, and this is where setting realistic goals can come in. And this is where, it's hard to talk about this. Oh, guys, about 13 years ago. It was in 2009. I was taking a coach's introductory coaches course, and I was talking about this idea, and this one person was like, well, this person wanted to jump from like being a 5-hour marathoner to, and this was an example client, 5-hour marathoner to a 3-hour marathoner in like one season, and I talked about, let's set up realistic expectations. What is realistic? How far can we improve in that 1 year? It might happen, but what's realistic here? And helping people devise those goals. Sometimes people don't like that, and they don't like to hear it. Some coaches don't like to say it, and that's a hard conversation to have,
Yeah.
Neil, maybe, taking another year of mountain biking, learning how to mountain bike a little bit, maybe getting a mountain bike is going to help you a little bit, and then, and so that's setting people up for success, probably, would have I wanted to hear it?
Right.
No. Would have I listened? Probably. If I had a good, if I had good rapport, if
Maybe.
that coach had good rapport with me, probably. I listen to people, so
Yeah, and I think that's the conversation of like, hey, like these are our short-term goals, but what are our long-term goals, and kind of framing the spectrum of like you're going to develop towards these things. Like so it's bite-sized pieces of a season in a way, and then within that season are like the smaller bite-sized pieces, which is a terrible analogy of of mastery of those skills, and then you can grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. In that, in our email, you mentioned, you alluded to having read something recently that was kind of front of mind, and I was wondering if you wanted to kind of take a stab at what that
you can
was.
read a lot of things as athletes out there. There's so
Oh
much
yeah.
social media, social media and magazines, a lot of literature out there, and some are really good ideas. And some are not necessarily good ideas, but maybe not necessarily good ideas for you as an individual. And take everything with a grain of salt, because reading this article, I was reading it and it was like, this isn't setting people up for success, because if maybe if you were an elite athlete and had a really good ability to recover, these series of workouts would have worked really well. For a 55-year-old, 54-year-old, maybe not. I'm not saying that I did these workouts, but what I'm saying is I looked at them and thought about it. Or if you were a beginner and you jumped into this and said, I'm going to do these workouts. So, and early on, 25 years ago, I look at magazines, Runner's World, and saw these great workouts, and I would do these workouts. And sometimes they worked, sometimes they didn't, And there was a great book out that I got years ago that was like, okay, learn how to run a marathon in 3 days a week, and sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, and it depends on who you are.
And then I feel like that comparison trap comes out of that too, in which it's like, well, why can't I do these workouts? Or it's, so and so says I can do these workouts, so I should be able to, and then not be like, I feel like that's just that is like icing on the cake of the Strava comparison, of the Instagram comparison, of all those
And
things.
it's frustrating because you could see the authors, and you go, wow, this is like a really, really good coach. Neil knows what he's doing, so I should listen to what Neil says, and you go, wait a second. If you look at that and go, maybe for some people, but is it setting me up for success? Maybe there's ways I can alter these workouts, or maybe these workouts really aren't right for where I'm at, and that's okay. Here's another piece that I was going to mention, is this idea of self-compassion. And going back to this idea of
Yeah.
acceptance and self-compassion. You're going to have all these feelings, these comparisons are coming up. You got to take that deep breath, catch yourself, and refocus to where you are right now. Okay, you're going to look at that magazine and go, why can't I do this? That's okay. That's okay. Come back to where you are right now, where your feet are. Have compassion for yourself. And I know there are so many athletes out there. That's a dirty word.
Yeah, it's easy to be like, oh, I don't need that, and it's like, well, no, everyone needs that, and I think that it ties in really well to the idea of being present, right? Like if you're being present, you can be self compassionate. If you're running the mile that you're in, you can be self compassionate, and I feel like that it shouldn't be a dirty word for anyone. It should be something that we all strive to put into practice in our days. And then I see that in emails from athletes where it's like, okay, you gotta cut yourself some slack. Like, email doesn't provide the best tone at times, and it's like, maybe if I talk to this person on the phone, I will feel different about their situation. But I hear that and I see that and I feel that from athletes of this, you gotta be compassionate towards yourself in the interval workout that you're doing that's uncomfortable, in the race scenario, and then in all those moments in between. I think that, we are our own worst critics. That's a common bit of vernacular, but it's true, and it's athletes are not immune to that.
There's no doubt. I was thinking of something. I made something up the other day. Is when you compare, come back to here. When you catch yourself comparing, come back to here, come back to right now. And it's going to be, you're going to read those magazine articles. You're going to feel those moments of self-doubt. Take that deep breath and just come back to where you are right now. This interval, this minute on this hillside. There's, I probably mentioned on the last podcast, there was this awesome moment where I'm running down, it was almost 30 miles into this race, and there are these beautiful wildflowers. And I tell people, look at the flowers. Notice the flowers. Yeah. Beautiful yellows and purples. And I was just caught up in joy in that moment of I got to be right here in this mountainside. That's all I care about. And then just keep moving.
Yeah, and then you got to keep running the mile that you're in. Okay, so what are some practical things that an athlete sitting with this in August, maybe looking towards fall races, maybe they had a good or a bad experience in an earlier season race, and they've got one more big one to close out the year before we roll towards winter. And I'm wondering what can those athletes do to reframe their confidence if they're in a place maybe where they're a little bit shaken.
Number one is go review your training peaks, review your log, whatever you're using, review it, look for those successes, dig, really, really dig into that. I think number two is, I want to touch on, self-talk, and you really should be 6 weeks out, 4 weeks out, it's getting later in the game to practice positive or more helpful self-talk. But look how you're talking to yourself. Write out 3 things that might be helpful for you. So think about motivational self-talk. And I like putting it in kind of the third person. You're great. You got this. You use something that's, that's realistic. You got this next hill. You got this hill. Saying that to yourself over and over again. Practice this on your next training run. Practice this. Have it written out in a Post-it note on your computer. Look at it in the morning. Sometimes it's hard to believe, but once you start practicing it, you start coming to that. Now, the other piece is that, going back to that idea of catch yourself when you compare, catch yourself when you start going into, when you're getting hooked by the negative, by all the unhelpful stuff. Catch yourself. Take that deep breath, and refocus on what you can control right here and right now. You've practiced all this stuff. You've practiced your nutrition. You've practiced, there's going to be a rainstorm on Hope Pass next week, okay? I'm just letting you know. You've practiced running in the rain. You've practiced dealing with blisters. Remember that. This, and you can control that. You forgot a gel. Okay, but you practice going to the aid station, grabbing potatoes. So you've practiced all this stuff. Remember those little things that you can control right there in the moment. You can control your effort consistently. What is your effort right here, right now? Catch yourself when your mind is taking you off on the wild. It's trying to push you around, because it's going to do that. That's what our mind is trained to do. It does that, to a lesser extent for some people, and for some people a lot. And that's okay. It just varies. And it's coming back, recognizing when you're getting caught in that, and coming back to what you can control right now. So I think those are the best things. Practice self-talk, practice the controllables, practice being flexible with your mind. You're going to notice these things. You're going to be uncomfortable. Your mind is going to say, mean things to you, you know, and you know, it's
Oh
gonna say
yeah.
mean things, and but recognize when you're getting caught up, and don't, you know, this is where, okay, thank you, mind, thank you for pushing me around. I'm going to come back to what I can control right now, and that's going to get you to the finish line. You know, that's going to get you to the next step. You
Yeah.
know, and if you fall, that's okay too. You're going to be able to get back up and do it again, and do it again. You know, and it's like I've tried that mountain bike race a couple times. I'm going to get a coach, by the way. You know, so you know, I have to get a coach this year because you know, um, but I get back up. Well, you know, to set myself up for success, you know, and you know,
For sure.
that's just something that, you know, you have to focus on. And so yeah, that's, you know, that's how I, you build, you know, I know I could do it. It's just getting those moments where I'm going to have that success, and build off of that.
I think that's great. I think those are really really practical. You can take it to the next step. You can write those things on a like on a postcard thing that you're going to put in your drop bag so you can remember it during the race. I just had UTMB talks with a couple guys and I said, "You know what? Courmayeur is a great place to drop out. Don't do it. Champs Lac's a great place to drop out. Don't do it. No, don't run the UTMB 80 miler. If you have to walk every single step, have your crew walk you out of that aid station." I think
Yeah. Don't sit by the fire and hope, you know, hope pass. Don't go there. You know, you keep going.
Yeah, no.
You know that fire. No, don't go near there.
Yeah, everyone that listens to this I think I'm hoping has been putting these things into practice, and if not, if they want more practice with these things, you're a coach, but you also work
Yeah.
on these skills with athletes, and so where can people reach out to you if they are interested in learning more?
Yeah, they could find me at Colorado, www.coloradopsychotherapyandsport.com. And what is my Instagram handle? I always forget. It's too long. It's at Colorado Psychotherapy and Sport. So they can find me there too.
Awesome. We'll link all of that in the show notes, Neil. As always, this was a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming on.